Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome. I'm Andy Rich. I'm the Dean of the Colin Powell School here at City College, and I want to welcome you to the Rick and Susan Goings Conversations in Leadership. Today, we have a very special event with Bob Roth and with Rick Goings, a conversation about mindfulness and meditation. So just by way of background, Colin Powell School is a school of social sciences here at City College, and we're the home of the public service and the leadership development programs of the college. We're about 4,000 students. We're the largest student division of the college, and our mission, is to transform one of the world's most diverse student populations into tomorrow's global leaders. It's kind of a heady mission for us, and it's a mission that came to us from our namesake, General Colin Powell, who graduated from City College in 1958. He grew up in the South Bronx, just like many of our students today. And when it came to college, it was City College or nowhere. And came here, and by his own admission, wasn't the greatest student, didn't find his passion in his studies, but he found ROTC here. And he went on to greatness. He was the first Black American to be National Security Advisor, to be chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and to be U.S. Secretary of State. And when he finished his service to our society, he came back to City College, his alma mater, and he sat down in a room with students who were very much like the students who are gathered here today, and he asked them to introduce themselves. And when they did, he heard his own story. And in that moment, he recommitted himself to this college. And for the last 20 years of his life, he was the chairman of the board for what was first the Colin Powell Center and now the Colin Powell School. And we're very honored to have his daughter, Linda Powell, now as the chair of our board. And one of the things General Powell liked to do is anywhere he went around the country, he would tell his friends about this school, about his school. And some of the folks that he talked to about this school were Rick and Susan Goings. He had served on the board with Rick Goings of the Boys and Girls Club of America. Both of them shared a passion for issues involving young people. And for many years, I think, tried to cajole Rick to make a visit to campus. And it was through those conversations that I got to know Rick Goings and eventually Susan Goings. And when General Powell passed away in October 2021, we intensified a conversation, Rick Goings and Susan Goings and I, about what we could be doing here at the school that really honored the legacy of General Powell, bringing leadership to this school and could be doing good for our society. And we settled on this series, the Rick and Susan Goings Conversations in Leadership, because fundamentally, even though we're a school of social sciences, we really put at the core of our mission advancing leadership, advancing all of you, our students, in your abilities to become leaders in every sector of society and in service to society. And it's a mission that Rick and Susan Goings believe in very deeply, and I want to begin by just thanking them. This is Rick Goings right here. Susan Goings you're going to meet in just a second. You're going to meet both of them through the course of the conversation, but none of this would be possible without them, and thank you very, very much. So we started this series last year with Gayle King from CBS News, with Condoleezza Rice, the former Secretary of State, and we continue it this year with this first session with Bob Roth and with Rick Goings. The focus is on mindfulness and in particular on meditation. And it comes at an important moment for us at the Colin Powell School and at City College, because we've launched a new initiative at the school focused on bringing mindfulness to all of our students. One of the things that we've noticed over the course of the last several years, and particularly in the wake of the pandemic, is the extent to which students are dealing with anxiety, with stress, with depression, and with the difficulties of some of the day-to-day responsibilities of often going to class full-time as a student and working full-time or part-time, and how to cope with that. And so across a number of courses in the Colin Powell School and lots of additional programs, we're bringing mindfulness. And as we kick off Conversations in Leadership today, we're putting transcendental meditation and mindfulness right at the center of it. And we are thrilled to have the person who has really been at the center of the national and international movement for transcendental meditation as our guest, Bob Roth. You're in for a treat, I can tell you. Bob Roth is someone who has quite literally saved many thousands of people's lives by bringing transcendental meditation to them. And he is someone who believes in the value of this movement to all segments of society. And so, you know, if you Google him, you'll find that he has taught transcendental meditation to a lot of famous people. But he also, as the CEO of the David Lynch Foundation, brings it to hundreds of thousands of school children. He is devoted to his core to making sure that transcendental meditation is available to veterans, and frankly has been at the center of some of the clinical work that demonstrates how it can save lives. And so you're in for, I think, a real treat in hearing from him about the work that he has done and about what the movement for transcendental meditation can mean for our society. So you're going to meet Rick and Susan Goings, who are making this whole series possible for two reasons. When we first imagined doing the series, I had the chance just weeks before to see an interview that Susan Goings had done with General Colin Powell several years ago. She is an accomplished and award-winning journalist who has interviewed heads of state, interviewed major figures in entertainment, in politics, sports, you name every sector, business. And when I saw this interview, it was really one of the most touching conversations I'd ever seen anyone have with General Powell, so much so that, in fact, when General Powell passed, it was the only interview that we shared out with the entire community. If you wanted to understand who General Powell was, you really should see the interview that he did with Susan Goings. And so when we developed this series, I was incredibly pleased that Susan agreed to be the person who would do the interviews, and you'll see why that's so important today. And then when we were putting today's program together, and Bob Roth had agreed to speak, one of the things that he requested, and Susan will tell you more about this, was that we might have somebody who practices transcendental meditation join him for part of the conversation so that you can understand from someone who's a practitioner and not just a teacher what it is and how it can affect your life. And there's lots of people who might have done this, but we could not have done better than Rick Goings himself, who has been practicing transcendental meditation, I think, for well more than a decade, maybe 2 decades. Rick Goings, by way of background, is the chairman emeritus of the Tupperware Company. He is the former chairman of the board of the Boys and Girl Club of America. He was with Susan, the co-founder of the World Federation of Youth Programs. He is now stepped down as the chairman of that, and Susan is the new chairperson of the World Federation of Youth Programs. And he's just an extraordinary human being. So I thank Rick, I thank Susan, and I want to invite Susan and Bob Roth to join me on stage.
There's not much left to say after that. Fabulous job. Thank you so much. And welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Greatly appreciated. I think this is an incredibly important session today, and one I'm really looking forward to, because probably many of you don't know a lot about transcendental meditation. And I know I don't, but I should, because Rick has been a meditator for the 25 years that we've been married. So I've sat and I've watched him once or twice a day, and I still don't understand it. So I'm really looking forward to this. And I have to say, recently, our dog has started meditating with him. We have a very frisky Australian Shepherd, and she sits on the couch next to him in the morning, and it calms her down too. It's like she's mimicking what he's doing. Anyway, please help me welcome the foremost authority in my mind, and one of the foremost authorities around the world, Bob Roth. Hello.
Hi there.
Have a seat. Rick is going to join us in a few minutes, but I thought we would start first by chatting with Bob and find out about his history. And we've been friends for quite some time, so I know a lot about him. So you have to forget all that and pretend that we don't know anything, because they don't. So how did you first become interested in transcendental meditation? How did you even hear about it?
Well, I grew up in a very politically minded family in the San Francisco Bay Area. I worked for Senator Bobby Kennedy Sr. in his presidential campaign when I was still in high school. And I saw Bobby Kennedy speak in San Francisco on June 1st, 1968, San Francisco, at the San Francisco Civic. I'm going to get to meditation.
That's okay.
And when
All
I
of
was
us
5 years old, I heard him speak, and I thought, it wasn't that I was a Democrat or Republican. I thought, I was always interested in political science. I said, oh, we could change the world. 2,000 people, we could change the world. And then 4 days later, he was gone. And it was devastating. As a 17-year-old kid, it was devastating for me. So I went to college with the idea of going to law school and becoming a U.S. senator like Bobby Kennedy. I wanted to change the world. That's all I wanted, to change the world. And it took me about, going to college in 1968, took me about a month to realize that politics was not going to heal the soul of the nation. Politics is important, but it was not going to be my path. My mom was an educator. I thought, all right, educational curriculum, change the world that way, so here's now the meditation. I'm going to school full-time. I'm working full-time. There are riots in the streets over Vietnam. I was very stressed. And going to school for the first year is crazy anyway. Very stressed. And I was not into anything woo-woo or crazy. I love science, and this one person who I really respected turned out that he was meditating. He was doing something called transcendental meditation. It was not a word in my vocabulary, but there was something about him that was real and normal and kind and strong, and he was smart. And so I said, I don't believe in any of that stuff. And he said, well, you don't have to believe in this for it to work, and he had a pen. He said, if you drop a pen, you don't have to believe in gravity for the pen to fall. You don't have to believe in TM, as it's called, to meditate. So I thought, all right. I was pretty stressed. I'll give it a try. If I don't like it, I'll walk out of the room in 10 seconds. And my first experience of doing TM was so relaxing, physically. I was a smarmy 18-year-old know-it-all kid at that time. And it was so relaxing, physically so relaxing, and I felt so much better afterwards that one of the first thoughts I had afterwards was, oh, maybe this is a tool I could teach those kids, because I wanted to work with kids, particularly in under-resourced communities. Maybe I could help those kids, and that was, I'm dating myself, June 28th, 1969, and now I run a foundation, David Lynch Foundation, and we have brought the meditation to over 1 million children and teachers in the U.S. and all over the world for free. And we work with veterans, and we work with police and firefighters, and we work with public school teachers, and we work with frontline healthcare workers, bringing the meditation because we live now in a pandemic of trauma and toxic stress that is not just disappearing.
Let's talk a little bit about the David Lynch
Sorry,
Foundation.
long answer.
No, there are no wrong answers. Right?
Long answer.
Oh, long.
There are long answers, maybe not.
Yeah, maybe so. Let's talk a little bit about the David Lynch Foundation, and then we'll go back. I want to go to the basics of meditation, especially transcendental, because there are different kinds of meditation. But so for those of you who don't know who David Lynch is, he's a very famous filmmaker and director, and started doing transcendental meditation 1973. I met him in, I think, 1983 when he asked my late husband Jeff and his band Toto to write the music for a movie he was doing called Dune. And the soundtrack was being recorded at our studio, the Villa. And so I saw him all the time, and as my reporter mind, I observed he was very disciplined, very organized, very calm, very even-tempered for me, because it's very stressful. You're dealing with a lot of people and orchestras and all kinds of things. And but I never heard him mention that he meditated. I never saw him meditate. He would be there for long days. So obviously he was sneaking away and
it's a private thing. You just do it on your own. It's done sitting comfortably in a chair for 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, and you don't talk about it, and you don't have to listen to music, or there's no apps. It's just something. Yeah,
how did you meet David, and how did you end up being the CEO of his foundation?
I had heard that David, if any of you saw the TV show Twin Peaks, he's the one who did Twin Peaks. And so and Mulholland Drive was a movie. So I had heard that he was meditating, and I always wanted to bring meditation to kids. And and I'd been teaching the meditation for like 30 years, but always in my mind, I taught it at Apple Computer, and I taught it at General Motors, and I taught it just to regular folks, and also San Quentin Prison out in the Bay Area. But I always wanted to bring it to kids, and I thought, well, we need to start I said, I wish there was a foundation that would raise money and then give it to us so I could pay teachers, TM teachers, to go into schools and teach TM for free. And I kept talking about it, and somebody said, just stop talking about it, just start the foundation yourself. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew David was a meditator and prominent, and I asked him if he would start a foundation in his name because it helps get the word out, and he said yes, and that was over 18 years ago. And he's an extraordinarily creative, kind, compassionate, powerful. He's the real deal. He is the real deal.
Yeah. I found it very interesting that both of you are Eagle Scouts.
Yeah.
So that means as kids, they were very together, very focused. And I found
I always like hiking, so I sort of backed into being an Eagle Scout because I just like being
it's a lot
outdoors.
more than just hiking.
Yeah.
It's very impressive. If anybody makes it to that level of scouting, very few make that. So that
was a real great experience for me.
Yeah. In your book, you talk about Kenny, a young man that you were tutoring. Was that in high school or in college?
In high school.
In high school.
No, I was in college. Yeah.
Did you ever have the opportunity to go back and help him, teach him meditation?
He learned to meditate.
He did?
Yeah, he learned to meditate. The thing is about meditation is, it was a way for me years ago, decades ago, and worse then than now. You hear then you couldn't even use the word meditation in sort of polite company. It was just so weird.
Yeah.
You just didn't want to say it. And today, there's some semblance of that meditation, but not nearly like it was before. Today, doctors prescribe it, and it's practiced in the military, and it's in businesses and schools, and I know you're all in a leadership program, and I can think of nothing more important than doing something like TM for leadership, because leadership is not just being competent and clear and focused, but it's equanimity. It's balance. It's not losing yourself. And so I think that the meditation is crucial for that. Go ahead.
Now, why do you think that meditation has that kind of mysticism?
I think it had that because there wasn't science. It was just too, in a world where you're just going and going and pushing and just do it. And, and then if you're not doing it, then you're wasting your time.
So what have you done to try to counteract that?
Research. Not myself, but helping to raise funds to do research. And the David Lynch Foundation has been at the forefront of doing research on the effects of transcendental meditation on anxiety and depression and burnout, which students, please, the pressure I was under, but what you have today is just, and the anxiety that you carry with you every day, all the time. You can't, okay, you can take something, but then it's back as soon as it wears off, and it's not long-term so anxiety, depression. So doing the kind of solid research in these areas so that, and this is the focus now of the David Lynch Foundation, that the meditation gets incorporated in the healthcare system. So it's part of Blue Cross Blue Shield or Aetna, or part of any insurance, private insurer or public or federal insurance. So there's many different channels. So that's what we want. I feel that, that the thing is right now, mental health issues, and Dr. Rich knows this, mental health issues, particularly for those of us who are in school, it's just not going away.
Right.
The pressure and demand is not just, it's not suddenly next year going to be, the Yankees came from nowhere and won, and now all the anxiety is gone. That's not happening. It's getting worse. So we need tools, and there is no medicine. There's no magic bullet coming from the drug industry, and I think they do great stuff, but for anxiety and depression and burnout. So there's not that. And transcendental meditation is incredibly effective. So it might as well be covered and reimbursed by insurance companies. So that's what we're working on.
So they haven't started that yet?
There are some companies, businesses, hospitals that cover costs of TM. And I think within a year or two, you're going to start seeing more and more private insurers doing this, and it's just going to open the floodgates because mental health, anxiety, depression, that stuff is undermining a whole generation. We go to college with these high aspirations. Many of you, or this is your first generation, you're here for the first time in your families, and under so much pressure, so much upheaval, we need a non-pharmaceutical. We need something healthy and safe that's universal, that anyone can do. And once you realize that this isn't something wackadoodle, transcendental meditation is simple and natural and effortless and evidence-based, and it's not a religion or a philosophy, there's no downside.
So the audience here is primarily young adults. They've dealt with the pandemic. Many of them were in high school when the pandemic started or had just started college. And so they're dealing with that, with isolation and without interpersonal interaction.
That must have been so intense.
Yeah. Plus you have social media. Plus you have all the electronic devices. So what impact is that having? Have you noticed over the years, has it evolved? Is it worse? Is it better?
Oh, no. Sometimes people say, the stress isn't any worse, it's just our understanding of stress, medical understanding of stress that's more. And I don't believe it for a minute.
Really?
I think we do understand a lot more the effect of stress. So we see something and it's frightening or just unsettling or whatever, traumatizing, and then that experience, hits the amygdala, which is the emotional center in the brain, and then that pings the adrenal glands, and now I'm flooded with cortisol levels, and then I got fight or flight, and we need cortisol. You all heard of cortisol, it's a stress hormone. We need cortisol to get up in the morning, but we don't need this sort of hyper pumping it out, and we can't ever not feel that way. And then the fight or flight sympathetic nervous system gets going, and that absolutely undermines our health. It absolutely weakens the immune system. It clouds our memory. And I think today with social media and the kind of pressure that students are under, unimaginable. I think even I grew up in the 60s when you had the fighting in the streets over Vietnam or civil rights. I mean, I knew what that was like as an 18-year-old kid, but I think what students are going through now is far worse.
I agree with you.
Far worse.
Yeah.
And so the idea of meditation, which 50 years ago was just for hippies, and now, and then 10 years ago was maybe people who had the luxury of finding the time to meditate. I think right now it is not just important, it's essential. I'll say one more thing, and I really appreciated what Dr. Rich said about what you're doing here at CCNY with mindfulness and mental health. I talk to a lot of universities, and they, for a long time, and I think you're at the cutting edge here, it moves me to tears what you're doing, because for a long time, if you were in another school, another college, and you were anxious or you were depressed or you were worried, they'd say, yeah, go across campus and now talk to a guidance counselor and sign up maybe for a yoga class. And then fine. Now what they're saying is, you're studying psychology, sociology, all the different disciplines. What do you need? And that knowledge is changing every minute anyway. What you're learning today is going to be 10 years from now, 5 years. But what's not going to change is your tools to stay healthy, to stay clear. And it's not just, I have to say, it's not just getting rid of stress. It's waking up the creative networks in your brain so your memory is better, so you can solve problems, so you can know what's a priority, so you have the self-discipline or the self-awareness of, I'm not going to go that way. I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to get influenced because everybody's doing that. Your own self-referral basis. And so they're now saying they need to put this at the core of their academic curriculum, that meditation, TM, or yoga, or mindfulness is not over on the side. It's a course, and you're going to be able to take that course through your years that you're here, and you're going to carry that with you for the rest of your life, and I think that's the future.
Are there schools that are teaching, universities and colleges, that actually have TM classes?
Starting to move in that, TM classes, yes. As a matter of fact, medical schools Medical schools, because I don't know if you all know this, but residents in the whole healthcare industry, I mean the whole healthcare field, stress, we have a program with the David Lynch Foundation called Heal the Healers, which is bringing TM to frontline healthcare workers, including medical residents. And the highest rate of suicide in the healthcare industry, and it's going up among doctors and nurses, the highest rate of suicide, residents. I had no idea. And so Johns Hopkins University, we just did a study there. We do studies, just did a study there. Dramatic reduction in anxiety and stress and improvements in sleep and diet. And in Chicago, we did a program with Stritch Medical School. So again, we're talking here, it's the tipping point, and I think, and before COVID, I don't think I ever would have said this. COVID changed everything. I think within 2 years, it's going to be the standard. And so here, CCNY and what you're doing, Dr. Rich, is at the and I'm not just saying this because you're all here. This is the forefront of the country. I travel all over the country, and what's going on here is a priority. Very impressive.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we now know that it's very helpful. I know from watching Rick that it calms him. It very much is a stress reducer, but I don't understand how it works. So if these students, if somebody wants to sign up, first of all, why do you have to pay to learn TM? Can you not just get a book, or can you not watch a YouTube video? I mean, is there only one way to learn TM?
So there are many different meditation techniques. There's mindfulness meditation, there's walking meditation. People say, well, my meditation is running, or my meditation is listening to music, or that's fine. The word meditation just means thinking. Okay. So you can have a walking meditation, you can have a swimming meditation, you have a music meditation, you have an equine meditation, or you love riding horses. I don't know if, in town, but, and transcendental meditation, the word transcendental just means to settle down. If you use the analogy of a cross-section of an ocean where you have choppy waves on the surface and then the ocean, but it has a quiet depth. So the mind is the same. Choppy waves on the surface means the active thinking mind. I like to call it the gotta. I gotta do this, and I gotta do that, and I gotta call him, all the gottas. So we live up here, and yet the hypothesis is, just a hypothesis, that deep within every one of us, right now, every one of us, there's a level where your mind is already calm and settled and wide awake. We've just lost access. We're just stuck up here. And this isn't something you visualize. It's not something you believe in. In transcendental meditation, you access it. And when you access that, research at Harvard Medical School and UCLA Medical School decades ago showed your body gains a state of rest deeper than the deepest part of deep sleep. That deep rest, and I'm going to answer your question, I promise, that deep rest reduces remember I talked about cortisol. You get a good night's sleep, cortisol levels drop 10%. 20 minutes of this meditation, transcendental meditation, cortisol levels drop 30 to 40% and stay down.
And this is all documented.
Published research, independent universities. And serotonin is a well-being hormone, neurotransmitter. When you're depressed and you get antidepressant medication, often they're giving you serotonin to boost your serotonin. So serotonin levels go up during TM and naturally and stay up. So to learn transcendental meditation, it's not just this quick fix little sort of thing, I just, on a cover of some magazine, 5 steps to meditate. If you learn TM, you have your own trained teacher, certified teacher. You have a great teacher here, Joshua Pittman. And
is it always one-on-one?
One-on-one for the first day. It takes about an hour a day over 4 consecutive days. First day is one-on-one, takes about an hour. Then the next 3 days in a small group takes about an hour over 3 days. Then you got it. There's no app, there's no technology stuff. You've got it for the rest of your life. And the cost, it's a nonprofit organization for people who can afford to pay. They can pay, but I was just telling, again, Dr. Rich, that David Lynch Foundation is happy to provide scholarships for free for the 100 students, first 100 students who registered and then are here to learn the meditation. And so that is something we would like to give to you because that doesn't happen.
So thank you for that.
And that's because we love the goings.
Well, I think that's a remarkable gift. So think about that. You will explain to them, Andy, how they can sign up for that opportunity, right?
And I learned it as a student. It just changed everything for me. Remember, so skeptical, just thought all that stuff was just nonsense. I slept better. My memory was better. I could read books and remember what I was reading rather than just staring at a thing for 10 minutes and then turning the page. Everything got better.
When you're deep into meditation, and it takes about 20 minutes.
Do it for 20 minutes twice a day.
20 minutes twice a day. Well, sometimes we actually say to Rick, maybe you need to meditate a third time. But I mean, what's the first thing that happens? When you close your eyes and you meditate, you have a mantra, right?
You're given a mantra is just a fancy word, which just means a sound. You're given a word or a sound, used silently, that has no meaning, a couple syllables. And it looks just like this. There's nothing, it just looks like that. I do it on the subway. I do it in the back seat of a cab or whatever. I did it at a Yankee
Wherever
game.
you have 20 minutes.
Yeah, I did it at a Yankee game that was a bad game. So I like the Mets too, but Yankee game. And then what you do is so the teacher gives you a simple sound, a mantra. And you learn how to use that sound silently and without any effort, just gently, easily. It's a sort of a vehicle or a catalyst. And then
repeating it over
yeah,
and
you're
over.
thinking it. Just not over and over, but you're thinking it comfortably, because over and over again could be so boring. So you learn how to think it in a comfortable way. And one of the first things you notice is a state of deep physical relaxation. As your attention goes from here and just settles down. And so the first thing you'll notice is deep relaxation. And sometimes people will say to me, well, so you're meditating and you're experiencing for 20 minutes with your eyes closed and you're settling down to this quiet state and you do it for 20 minutes and they say, how do you know when your 20 minutes are up? And I say, look at your watch. You're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. You're just.
So it's okay to glance down and look at your watch.
Yeah. You're just. You know how maybe you have younger brothers and sisters or a partner who can go from 0 to 60, like really get upset really quickly. Well, fine. The nervous system can go the other way. We learn how to do that, so the nervous system just takes rest. That's the main thing. We're hardwired for this. It's natural. Sometimes people say to me, well, I think meditation is great, but I have the busiest mind in the world. I could never clear my mind of thoughts. Well, I can never clear my mind of thoughts either. It's not clearing your mind of thoughts. It's allowing your active thinking mind to just settle down. And you know how we say, oh, that kid is a hothead or he's boiling over with rage. But we also say, cooler minds will prevail. Cool, calm, and collected. It's just accessing that cool that's within.
So as I was researching for this, I saw a list of mantras by age. So if you started meditating.
And where did you get that? Online?
Oh, online, of course.
And Neil Armstrong never landed on the moon, and Barack Obama was born in Kenya,
So if you're in a certain age group, you're not going to get the same mantra necessarily.
Now, there are not, everyone has a mantra. There are not 8 billion different mantras. It's like everybody has red blood, but there are blood types. So there's Rh negative, there's A, or there's O, and a specialist learns how to identify, oh, you're O, and so this is for you, this is your blood type. Well, to be a certified teacher of TM, which is a wonderful profession, and there are many, many young people becoming teachers of TM, you learn how to select the right sound for a person and then teach them how to use it properly. But it's not like the mantra is some magical thing that like, boo, it's not, it's a vehicle. And when you have a vehicle, you have to learn how to drive it.
And is that something private, or do you share it with people?
Private.
You keep it private.
It's yours. It's yours, private.
So you're never supposed to share it with anybody?
You're asked not to share it.
Oh, you are?
And people say, well, you know, why can't I just share my mantra? Because the mantra alone doesn't do anything. It's like, again, if you don't know how to drive a car and someone says, here's a Tesla, what do I do with it? I don't know where to start. So if a person is genuinely interested in the benefits of the meditation, then go to a certified teacher, it's a nonprofit, and learn how to do it properly. And if you're not serious, then do whatever you want. But if you're serious, then learn properly.
So if these, I'm going to call them kids, if these kids started learning meditation, especially TM, what can they first expect? What differences might they notice with regard to school or work or family?
Sleeping better.
Huge.
Sleeping better, huge, huge,
Yeah.
huge, huge. Any of you had that experience of like you can't fall asleep or you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't fall back asleep? It's because of stress. We're like sponges. We just carry it, and you know, people drink alcohol or do whatever. All it does is numb the prefrontal cortex. It takes that offline. It doesn't really do anything for the cortisol levels or anything like that. So this gives your body this deep rest during meditation so that when it's time, and gets rid of stress, so when it's time to go to sleep at night, you're not carrying like a backpack of stress. Your body's more like a car engine is finely tuned, you know. It's not like racing all the time. Your nervous system is finely tuned. So you sleep better and you feel happier naturally, and I think focus and memory.
You actually knew the Maharishi, which is to me is always the gold standard of TM. I mean, he was, but he didn't create TM.
No, transcendental meditation is, and Rick and I like to talk about this, its origins, again, it predates Buddhism and Judaism and Hinduism and Islam. It's not an ism, it's not a religion. It predates all these. And so it's been passed on for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Its actual roots was a warrior's meditation. It was for warriors, and we're all warriors these days, but it was a warrior's meditation. What do we need? What does a warrior need? Not to be clear, focused, sharp, not to overreact, not to get angry over everything, not to have your buttons pushed. You'll get killed. And so for the warriors. And Maharishi was a physicist by training who studied with one of the great meditation teachers in India. And Maharishi was one of the world's foremost experts in the brain, in consciousness and meditation. So he taught me how to teach this.
Do you think that it's impacted the David Lynch Foundation and this great success that you guys have had on getting the word out around the world of the positive impact that TM can have by having celebrities? Your list of celebrities that you've taught TM to is unbelievable. But one thing my friend Eleanor noticed, there aren't many athletes on that list. It's a lot of entertainers and CEOs and...
There are a lot of athletes, they just didn't say their names, but we teach a lot of athletes.
Okay.
I teach, professional athletes do this, and now there's a friend of mine who wants us to bring it to the US Olympic team, because people say, well, my meditation is exercise and I run. I can't tell you the number of professional athletes or Olympians who are in the best physical shape and are still really anxious. And so a lot of people talk about, to stay physically healthy, we do stuff from the neck down. What am I eating? My exercise. And so meditation is neck up.
That's a good point. So in your book, which he has a copy for each one of you also, by the way. Which
Signed.
Is signed.
my carpal tunnel.
In the book, you talk about Rick, and you said Rick is frankly the last guy you'd peg as passive.
That's right.
So let's hear from Rick, who has been meditating twice a day for 30, 40 years. Can you come up?
Wait, my friend, I get to kiss her.
Oh.
I would just like to say, two of the finest human beings I've ever met and know.
Sweet.
Two fine human beings.
Okay.
It's true. It's true.
So full disclosure, Rick was not our first choice to join us today.
About 20th.
No.
No.
There were in May when we started talking about you doing this, and he said, I think it would be great for the students if we have somebody, maybe somebody well-known who can talk about their experience with TM. And so you reached out to one friend who's,
say
I can say it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. To Robin Roberts, and she said, oh my gosh, I would love to, but I'm getting married.
She's on a honeymoon right now.
She's on her honeymoon right now. And then you reached out to another friend
Hugh Jackman.
who is having other challenges right now. We'll try to get these people to come another day, okay? So,
Hugh Jackman did send his very best. He's a very strong meditator, and
Yeah.
he really appreciated the school and what's going on here. I told him all about it, and so maybe another time.
yeah.
But better than Hugh Jackman.
And then you immediately said, before anybody else, you said, I have a great idea, because he's a titan of business, and that's really important because I think it's greatly impacted and had a great input with regard to his success. And you said, Rick, and I went, okay. So Rick, tell us, how did you first start meditating and why?
Well, firstly, I've got to say, what's so special about here is that General Powell, he used to always say, call me Colin. I said, no, I was military. You're always going to be general to me. And he called me 2 weeks before he died, and we stayed in touch for years, and I'd have an issue on some huge, it could be geopolitical issue or with Boys and Girls Clubs, et cetera, and I'd call him from Africa. I'd be in South Africa, and he said, Rick, fly into Dulles, come meet me at the house, and we'll sort through this. And he did that for years. And when he called me, he was just calling to check on me. And he had some other health challenges, but none of us ever thought he was going to die. He was so proud of this school. And I've got to say for you guys here, he saw himself here, and you were living his legacy here, because he said, his words, technically, it's not an academic word, he said, as a student, I sucked. And he said, but I was good at the ROTC programs, and I wouldn't have graduated with a C average had it not been for my A's in the ROTC courses. And it was, and I've just got to tell you, what a wonderful sense of humor. But the whole embodiment of this, when you ask me, it was for the same reason. He believed that your role in life is to go from the person you are to the person you could become. And that's why I'm walking around the campus today thinking of him and thinking of the kids from all different neighborhoods and different countries, et cetera. So that's kind of was me. I left home at 17, tough family environment. And
By the way, Rick and I are both the first in our families. Well, you didn't actually graduate from college. Think of how successful you could have been had you graduated from college.
My father, 10th grade education. But that's what it gets on to the more I was Navy in school, and then I really started getting interested in philosophies of personal development. Really started to study. And most of what was written on personal development was written more than 100 years ago. And I started to study it. And it led me more to this attitude that everybody is two people. We're the person we are today, and I'd use the head and shoulders of an individual, and we're secondly the person we could become. And so the name of the game in life, the path ought to be, how do I become the best version of myself? And that's why General Powell was always that way. And that's why I loved his second book. He said, it worked for me. It worked for me. He never thought he was the smartest guy in the room, but he often was, because he was a sponge for learning. Well, what this led me to was I was looking for personal development tools. And interesting fact, I've learned so much from Bob over the years. Our brain is about 3% of our body weight, but it consumes about 20% of the oxygen and our calories. So I had spent a lot of time from here down, And I was short in high school, cross-eyed. And so I said, hey, I'm going to get my body in better shape, get my eyes fixed. And then I said, I was in my late 20s. Why not working on your head? I kept being a student-minded, didn't worry about degrees. I worried about the things I could learn. But the more I studied this, the more it led me to transcendental meditation, as this was going to be a tool. And if I'm talking to each one of you, if I was talking to you individually, I would tell you, people go through life as either generally a victim, blown around like leaves, whatever the ambient weather, it's like the surface of the ocean, or they make a decision they're going to be a warrior. I don't give a shit what my background was.
Okay, I told you you couldn't cuss.
That's one of
They
the things I
probably
write
don't know
is
what that word means.
try not to swear, but General Powell did too when he wanted to make a point, but it was rare. But he said, what if you go through life as a warrior? And you kind of went through, and that isn't a militant sense, but it's if you had tools. I was talking earlier today with a friend who was head of SEAL Team 2, and he was basically, you're thrown into unexpected situations. Sounds a lot like life, doesn't it? And he said, what if you always have the ability to respond? And if I was passing out some to you, I'd say, think of each one of you, get a bandolier of not silver bullets, but tools. And so when this happens, I know how to do that. TM was that for me, and it's been one of my best tools through life.
Explain to us when you actually meditate, when you close your eyes, what are you thinking? What are you feeling?
Yeah, well, first what I'm feeling is the same thing all of us are feeling. It's a reflection of what's happening around me. I mean, you talk about it well too, and others have as well. They talk about your monkey mind. If you ever, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you feel like there's some frigging monkey in your mind, not only the gotta, but the monkeys thinking of this, thinking of that, thinking, I gotta do this tomorrow morning, but if I get up now, what if I don't? If I get up now, I'll get 4 hours sleep. If I sleep another, that's a monkey in there. How do I take control of the monkey? And so what you do is, I let my monkey have his leash for a couple minutes, and then I slowly introduced my mantra. And what people get wrong too is they think you sit there and focus, repeat a word. I don't know. I introduce it.
When we first started, were you skeptical? Were you worried that it might change your mind or your personality or?
Yeah, actually, when I first started, I thought it was going to be a fad because the Beatles had started doing it. And what we know is that George meditated till his last day on Earth. But once I got past it was a fad thing, I started to feel the effects of it. And as a matter of fact, I would have people say to me, Eleanor, who we worked together 30 years, and she could tell late in the afternoon if I hadn't meditated.
I'd like
She would say, why don't you go meditate?
I would like to say, because you make that point, what does it feel like? It's nothing unnatural. It's nothing unusual. It's just you have the physical sense of, it's more physical, of just your body relaxing. The benefits, the reason why we do it is how we feel afterwards. You know how you feel if you if you haven't had a good night's sleep for a few days. Everything is off. Your relationships with other people, your ability to everything is bad. Now get a couple of good nights sleep, or have a few days off. Vacation. Now life is smoother, clearer, more settled. So you could look at it if you wanted completely from that physical standpoint. Your body we have a mechanism in the nervous system to take profound rest at will. And we've forgotten how to do it. Just on that physical level.
So with regard to leadership, because you brought up Colin Powell, and we're sitting here at his School of Leadership. How do you think TM has helped you become a leader? I mean, you probably, you were the chairman and CEO of Tupperware Brands for 25 years, which is extremely long tenure for a public company. So you're running this multi-billion-dollar company, which is extremely stressful, and everybody has stress. But I think that sometimes your stress level was way up there. How do you think TM helped you with regard to leadership and being the best leader you could be?
Well, there again, I think about this bandolier and think about tools and think about if I was advising you to come up with your own life toolkit, it depends. You'd lose, I mean, if somebody gives you, for example, a wrench, you use it in different ways based on what the issues are at that time. Again, back to my Navy SEAL buddy, he was talking to me, it involves a swear word. He was saying,
Don't say it.
you go in to a situation where it's unknown, and most SEAL teams are they're pods. You know, you've got a dozen or less, sometimes 6 people, and you're going into unknown situations. And he said, this is quote him, and then the shit hits the fan, and you better be able to think calmly and clearly, because if you're thinking with cortisol, then have you ever made a bad decision and you said to yourself, what the heck was I thinking when I did it? But if you have a calmness and you're much more objective, because people's lives were at stake. So, I mean, you know, Bob and I were doing a thing in New York City, a town hall, and they asked him, give an example of when it really you used it. And I said, I'm flying from Frankfurt to Geneva with 2 associates. We're on a private plane. The German pilots, the language of the cockpit is always English. And all of a sudden, the plane just started moving. And if you're going from Frankfurt to Geneva, you're flying over the Alps, okay? The transponder goes out. Same thing that went out on this F-35B this last week. And you don't know what your altitude is this. And I could tell the pilots were having issues because they switched to German. It meant they were panicking. They were not doing the language of the cockpit. I'm with my 2 associates. What I did, there's nothing you can do with externals like that. Planes banging like this, small jet. I put my thumbs together. I introduced my mantra, and 20 minutes later, I opened my eyes, and they both were swearing at me. Swearing at me. They said, where were you? We've been banging our heads against the ceiling. I just tightened my seatbelt and meditated. So when there's a crisis situation, you can be cool with it. You know, Susan, you know this, that I had to have an MRI last year, and I didn't know how long it was going to take. You know, almost nobody likes going into that MRI thing. I've got some friends, a psychiatrist friend of mine, they actually have to put him to sleep to give him an MRI. And I said, Billy, you're a psychiatrist. You should be able to handle this. He said, nope, I need a general anesthetic. So I go into it. I didn't know how long it was going to be. It was 1.5 hours. And after about a half hour, I said, I'm going to have a very long meditation. And I got through it. Or, honey, you know, I'd have an audience and I'd be in another country, and if it wasn't my first language, I had simultaneous translation. But if, you know, I had to do it in German or Spanish, which I'm not perfect, but the audience would always say they'd rather hear my bad, you know, schlechtes Deutsch, ausgezeichnet English. So I would do it in that. But I would be nervous. I would meditate before I'd go on stage.
That brings up another question. How do people, I mean, you have all these high-profile people who are super busy. How do you find time? So that's 40 minutes out of your day to meditate.
I tell people there's 1,000 440 minutes in our day.
Okay.
If we don't have a few minutes in the morning, when you first wake up, you sit up in bed, it's better than sleep anyway. It's different than sleep, but it's more rejuvenating than sleep. So you sit up in bed and you do your 15, 20 minutes. And then at the end of the day, ideally before dinner, if you don't have the 15, 20 minutes, that's something that's going to have such a profound effect on your constellation of changes in your brain and body and nervous system in the direction of health, you may need to reprioritize. That can sound a little flippant, but the fact of, and it does sound that way, but the fact of the matter is you get more time. I mean, when you're stressed, how much time do you waste online just scrolling through this? How much time, where did I put my keys? Where did I park the car? Where was I supposed to go? We waste so much time. And what these very, very busy people say, leaders, is that you get more time from taking the time out to meditate. You're more efficient. Jerry Seinfeld has been meditating for 50 years. Taught Chris Rock recently to meditate, and he absolutely...
Wait, Jerry Seinfeld taught...
No, I taught Chris.
Oh, you
yeah,
taught
we
Chris.
taught, yeah.
I want to be there.
That would have been a funny experience. But Alicia Keys meditates, and Sting, and I mean, so many people do this, and they find they have more time from it. Just more time.
It becomes
It's
a priority.
And it's an investment. It becomes a priority, and then you get more time from it.
Okay. You offered very kindly, one more gift from him was to teach a breathing exercise.
Oh, yeah.
But I have a question. Shall we do that before? Because we would like to open it up to some
Let's
questions
do
from the
questions,
audience.
and we can end with that.
Okay. All right. So let's open it up to questions. I see one right over here behind you, Daniel. Tell us your question.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. I had 2 questions. Number one, the first question I had is, where does the anxiety come from? How does sitting down and thinking about nothing solve the problem? And then 2, I was thinking about religious people. How should religious people interpret this?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
So we're not thinking about nothing. That would be a waste of time. And just nothing would come from nothing. This is actually accessing this quieter level of the mind. So you're still thinking, but accessing a quieter level of the mind. During that period, not much is happening. It's like what happens when you go to sleep at night. That's kind of a waste of time, you could say. And yet, we wake up the next morning, hopefully revitalized and able to get stuff done. So this you could, in some regards, you could see as a mini and much more powerful sleep, but it gives a different experience of restful alertness. So yes, doing nothing would do nothing. This is not doing nothing. This is accessing, one time a person said, I said quieter levels of the mind, and they said, well, what does that mean? And I said, do you have a good intuition? And they said, yeah, I think sometimes I have a good intuition. People come to you and they say, I'd like you to do this. I think you should do this. Make maybe something in business, make an investment. And it makes perfectly good sense on the surface, but then you get home and you think about it quietly and you go, yeah, I don't think so. And the person says, why? And you say, it doesn't feel right. So that's a quieter level of the mind. The hypothesis here is even deeper than that. There's a level where your mind is already settled and quiet and calm and wide awake. And that experience is fine. The key thing here is it gives your body a state of rest deeper than sleep. It gets rid of cortisol levels that sleep doesn't get rid of. It wakes up the creative networks in the brain that are required to make good decisions and be effective leaders. So to answer your question there, it's not doing nothing. You would be wasting your time if you were doing nothing. This is a very dynamic process of accessing parts of your mind and your brain and your nervous system that are there. And sometimes athletes here, you ever been in the zone or the flow, the zone? So it's similar to that. Mm-hmm. Religious people, there's 10 million people who have learned transcendental meditation of all religions. If this is not a religion, there's nothing to believe in, there's no faith, there's no acceptance of philosophy. There are probably in the United States, 3 million Christians have learned transcendental meditation. We have taught clergy in all religions to meditate. So I think if a person is religious, and I've taught clergy, and they say they meditate first, their body gets rid of stress, then they're much more mindful of the prayer. They're much more sensitive to the nuances of the prayer. They say that they're more able to follow the tenets of their religion, whatever the religion may be. And if a person is not religious, then they're able to live a more moral, ethical life in their own terms. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank
Well, I
you.
just want to see if I answered it.
Up there.
Yeah, okay?
Yeah, let's move.
Okay.
Good.
All
Up
right.
there.
You mentioned earlier that
What's your
you
name?
think. Oh, my name's Alexander Brooks. You mentioned
Alexander.
earlier in the
Talk
lecture.
a little louder. I
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier in the lecture that you think meditation can change the world. Could you espouse a little bit more on that?
The meditation can change the world.
Change the world.
Oh,
How can-
Sorry.
I think individuals, for a forest to be green, every tree has to be green, or trees have to be green. You can pass a rule, a law, that the trees should be green, but unless you water each and every tree, the roots, it's not magically going to happen. So that's number one. Number two, trauma is a unfair disorder or disease. It's a public health hazard for which you can give a child or a person can have all the opportunities in the world, but if they can't sleep at night, if they're racked with anxiety or depression or suicidality or addiction, then they cannot maximize, they can't take full advantage of those opportunities. So what I'm saying here is that as a public health measure, just like it's important to give people the opportunity to eat healthy, the opportunity to breathe good air, the opportunity to exercise, to have a good social safety network, we need to give them the tools to be able to maintain their own mental and physical health, like meditation. In and of itself, it's not going to change the world, save the world, but it does allow us to be more creative, stronger, more resilient to make the changes that need to be made in the world.
Let me give an example too, that I think all of us are really sensitive to right now. Not only in this country, but in the world right now, the politically charged environment and the polarization between Americans to other Americans, Europeans to other Europeans. It's happening all over the world. Asians right now. So much of what we came from in the past was the people that we elected were people that, and we agreed to political parties, that we all agreed to things we were for, and that unified us, and we came together on that. Most of the rhetoric today is things we're against, and that has brought people together with the negative side of that. It's really hard to have the calmness of, boy, I'd like to take a lot of our political candidates and get them all meditated right now. What effect that could have? You would start, firstly, because you start from a center of calmness in yourself, and that leads to how you treat other people and to a greater sense of responsibility. Susan knows I write this silly 3x5 card every day to myself on trying to be a better person. The first thing I write is AV, and it means add value. I mean, whatever I can do today, and that's what, it gets to be silly. I'll be in a public restroom and I'll see trash on the floor and I'll pick it up and clean it up. And I said, when did my job description include cleaning bathrooms? I said, why not? Mother Teresa used to always talk about leave every interaction with another person having done something to better their day and perhaps even their life. Once you start to get centered in that and get there was a great old funny story about a preacher who was trying to write a sermon, and he gave his little boy, he tore up a picture they had the world on the page, and he thought it'd give him a bunch of time. And he looked back, and the little boy had it put back together again. And he said, "Johnny, how did you do that so quickly? You didn't even know what this map looked like." He said, "Daddy," they had a glass tablecloth. On the other side was a picture of a man's head. And I found out if I made his head right, the world got right. and that's where too much focus has been from here down, not enough here up.
Well, talking about politics, it's not too late to run for the Senate, and maybe you could too.
I'll vote for the president, president, vice
Yeah,
president.
there you go, there you go. I don't know how we're doing on time.
But,
Okay,
honey,
so
she has been raising her hand.
I think we might be out of time if we want to do the meditation, because the meditation takes about
5 minutes. or
5
so.
minutes. Okay, let's do one more question then. One more.
Hi, thank
Thank
you.
you. You're welcome.
I just had a question. I'm curious, because many people facing anxiety are also on anxiety medications, would like to not be. Could you share some research on how people are, what's the rate of getting off of medication using TM? And also, how do you recommend people to continue with their medication as they're taking TM?
Wonderful question,
Yeah.
wonderful question. That cortisol is a stress anxiety hormone. So it's, again, secreted by the adrenal glands when we feel threatened or we're under pressure or you're caught in traffic and you have to be someplace and you don't have any control over that, and cortisol gets pumped out and then you experience anxiety. So that 30 to 40% reduction in anxiety physically, physiologically, biologically, biochemically, dissolves that underpinning of the anxiety. We have just completed about 6 studies in hospitals. We're in about 30 hospitals here in New York City. We're working with doctors and nurses and other frontline healthcare workers in the emergency rooms and also in the intensive care units. And the Journal of the American Medical Association, just so you know, recently published a study, and others have as well, that showed within 2 weeks of learning TM, among these doctors and nurses who were, this was during COVID, who were, life and death situations, that there was a significant reduction, marked reduction in anxiety levels and burnout that they don't see. Medications can take 2 months or more for them to kick in. The only research that's been done on reduction of medicines has been with antihypertensive medication. The National Institutes of Health have given about almost $25 million, and the Department of Defense another several $1 million to study the effects of TM on post-traumatic stress disorder and on anxiety and on high blood pressure. And it showed a significant reduction in, and I'm just saying significant, I'm going to give you, in the book, there's all the numbers. Yeah, so significant, it's just, the diastolic and the systolic, you get it all in the book. But the main thing is this research has been published and shown to be, TM has been shown to be highly effective. Going back to the religion issue, this is not a religion, this is a healthcare intervention. And what was the last point? Oh, we always work, as far as that goes, we say do what your doctor recommends.
Is there any intention to have a study about antidepressants?
Always, yes. The thing is it costs a lot of money to do these large-scale studies. Right now, there is, just to conclude, there's a study going on veterans and police and firefighters with transcendental meditation, and it's going on, it's called a phase 3 clinical trial, and it's being done at Northwell Health, Mount Sinai, and Columbia University Medical Schools, also Stanford, USC Medical Schools, and UC San Diego Medical Schools. And that study has been written by some of the leaders of the VA, and with the help of some of the leaders here, including Freda Plesser, who's here leading this initiative. TRICARE and other government and private insurers will be reimbursing for transcendental meditation for the 1 million veterans who suffer from PTSD. Now I'll answer your question. Whatever the doctor says. The doctor says when a person has high blood pressure, we'll say, talk to your cardiologist, because within a few months you may not need as high level of antihypertensive medication.
And I hope the same thing happens with the antidepressants.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, all right, so let's start.
This is a
The breathing.
teaser, isn't it?
Well,
Well,
this
this is
has
not,
nothing to do
right?
with transcendental meditation. Transcendental meditation, something you have to learn from a teacher. The results are far, far, far more comfortable and profound than this. However, and I know you've learned some breathing techniques here, but this is something so simple. Professional athletes do it. If you're a mom or a dad and your child can't sleep, you can teach them this. It's a simple breathing technique. How much time do we have?
You said 5 minutes.
How much? 3 minutes. Okay. So it's breathing in through the nostrils, nasal breathing it's called, and then breathing out through the pursed lips. And what you're doing is you're bringing oxygen up into the brain, you're calming the brain, and you're also calming what's called the vagus nerve, which is a part of it's a nerve that governs your respiration and respiration, heart, and digestion. So you're going to just sitting comfortably, eye open or closed. You're going to breathe in through your nose, and you're going to breathe in, filling your belly first, and then bring the air up into your chest and into your face, and then hold it for the count of 3, and then out through just softly through your lips, silently out into your lungs are like a flattened soccer ball, and hold it for 3 seconds. And we're going to do that for 1.5 minutes, and I am going to keep time. Okay? So this is very easy. You just comfortably, your mind can wander as it wants. Breathe in through your nostrils, expand your belly up into your face, hold it for 3 seconds, and then out, and hopefully the expiration will be a little bit longer than the inhalation. Okay, do one last. Inhale, exhale. All right.
Okay. So we now know about breathing. We know about the scholarships. We know about the books. And I hope everybody feels very relaxed. Is that how we should feel after that breathing exercise?
Yeah, relax. Was that okay? Was that nice? Yeah. And the nice thing is you can do it without looking weird. There's some of these breathing pranayams and all this stuff with this. You just do it, no one has to know.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, like I said, it's not too late to run for the Senate. That was one of your dreams.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, thank you. Let's all thank Bob
Thank
and
you
Ray.
all, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
you.
Yeah.